for hooking it up, Daniel. Americans are loath to talk about enslavement, in part because what little we know about it goes against our perception of our country, as a just enlightened nation, a beacon of democracy for the world. Slavery is commonly dismissed as sad, dark chapter in this country's history, as if the greater the distance we can create between slavery and ourselves, the better to stave off the guilt or shame it induces. But in the same way that individuals cannot move forward, become whole and healthy, unless they examine the domestic violence they witness as children or the alcoholism that runs in their family, the country cannot become whole until it confronts what was not a chapter in its history, but the basis of its economic and social order. So, I'm just going to jump into it from there. This is the Unmasked Agenda, and welcome to Season 2. And if that cold open was a little jarring for you, we are starting hot on the mic, and we're hitting the ground running. We are hitting that pavement hard by talking today about reparations and honoring Black History Month by not just looking backwards, but looking forward at a movement right now that is currently pushing the needle forward on addressing one of America's ongoing illnesses, if you will, the racial wealth gap. Not just a racial wealth gap, but something that is a symptom of a fundamentally ill country right now. Because we see what's going on in Minnesota, we see what's going on abroad, we see what's happening in the White House. Hell, we are seeing some of our neighbors being picked off the streets and being thrown on cars and being beaten in the streets by ICE agents just because of the color of their skin, quite by their own admission. So today we're going to talk about reparations, and Daniel, you can help me out by bringing in our guests. We are going to be speaking with folks from the Seattle African American Reparations Committee, or otherwise known as SAARC, the Friendly Neighborhood Agitators for Justice. Anyway, and I forgot to mention, of course, this is Season 2. You're catching this on Rainier Avenue Radio, and y'all know who I am. But if you forgot, this is Cliff. Don't worry, Tony will be back. He's just taking a little step back for this episode, but I am happy to be joined by folks from SAARC, the Seattle African American Reparations. Just in case you forgot. Hello, gentlemen. How are you?
We're good. It's good.
Right on. So, really honored to be joined, going from, I guess, my left on the screen, by a longtime friend, collaborator, mentor, fellow nerd, Riall Johnson. How you doing, sir?
Doing great.
Appreciate you. Also fellow gamer, too. I mean, it's debatable as to which one of us is better at teching, but, you know.
We can always just have a game on your show and see and show it and prove it. You can stream.
Daniel, bookmark that for the future. Bookmark it for the future. Anyway, I'm also happy to be joined by Mr. Kevin Allen, a longtime labor leader in the community, longtime civil rights activist and civil rights leader, and also a fellow brother from ASME Council 28.
Yep.
How you doing, sir?
I am doing okay, and I just got back from being down in Olympia, talking to legislators today on a state labor council. Talk about our legislative agenda, and reparations is part of the big picture. And we'll get to that.
Excellent. And last but certainly not least, I am ecstatic. Within 15 minutes of seeing this gentleman's Instagram and just seeing his work, which we'll get into in a second, I'm a fan. I encourage you to support him and also other Black comic book creators. Mr. Jiba Anderson, the pride of Chi-Town himself, and also definitely I'm definitely gonna say there is like a top 5 list of animators or artists in my comic book roster, and you're making it on that list. I'm work, brother.
Well, thank you, appreciate that. Hopefully, by the end of this discussion, I will crack the top 5.
I mean, we have to replace Mount Rushmore with something. Like,
but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. You know what I mean? So,
hey, when the revolution wins, we have to replace all these dusty old like neo-colonial and white supremacist monuments with something, right?
right,
Yeah,
right.
there you go. So in that case, let's just dive right into it. So a lot of folks, I shared the title, SAARC's full title twice, but not a lot of people might know, or well, rather, actually, you know what? A lot of people who watch this show probably know who SAARC is, but why don't Riall, actually, why don't we just start with you? And if you could just in like 30 seconds or so, just describe what SAARC is and the role that SAARC plays around reparations advocacy and kind of broader policy advocacy here in not just in the city of Seattle, but Washington State.
Yeah, so SAARC is an organization that advocates for healing of the Black community, repairing the damage that's been done. And that includes, of course, reparations. We also push a lot of other policies, that we are working on, watching, monitoring, supporting in Olympia this year, but also focusing on King County as well, to make sure that the health of the Black community is not just restored but elevated, to make sure that we have truly equal opportunities as other demographics in the state.
Absolutely. So, Kevin, you were just down in Olympia. I'm wondering from the what is the conversation like around bringing a lot of SAARC's priorities, as Riall just described them, to either labor's agenda, or rather to labor's agenda, and in other spaces, other spaces you might be in?
Well, right now, it's kind of like a low simmer for this legislative session. We had a legislative toehold put in through a proviso that was passed in the session last year. And we'll get to that going on. And, because of some of the other pressing issues, primarily funding and budget, as well as some of the pressures and threats from the federal, that seems to be sucking most of the oxygen right now. But that's why we have to stay in the game and engage and keep people oriented to it. Because as we conversation, we'll talk about, is it real? Is it attainable? And how do we help people gain the faith and keep the faith that it's really possible? Because so many people feel differently.
So, I want to just build on something you said, Kevin. So, is it real? Is it attainable? Is it a possibility in having people keep the faith? So, right now, when you talk about reparations in Olympia or in a lot of these legislative spaces, what is the general reaction that you get from people, in just kind of across the continuum?
Really, right now, and Riall could probably speak to this much more because he's had real direct contact. I would say that there are people who look at pressing needs, and they might look at reparations being further down the totem pole, where other people might have reparations higher up. And so that would be, I would consider that to be the diplomatic way to describe it. I don't know if you would add to that or think that that would be appropriate, or from your observation, especially from last year.
What do you say, Riall?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, so when you talk about reparations with like different legislators or different other lobbyists or just people along the political continuum, What kind of reaction do you get? What kind of myths that do you have to like myth bust? Things like that. And Kevin very diplomatically mentioned that there's still a good amount of resistance.
Oh, I mean, we're always going to get resistance on things, anything that's going to help the Black community. So it's always you're always going to see legislators bend over, twist themselves over each other to dodge it or deny it. So the number one thing we have to just establish with our legislators is just like, do you believe in it? Do you believe in reparations? And it's a simple yes. It's a simple yes or no, and then we can start from there. And if it's a no, then it's why. And if it's a yes, then it goes to are you willing to push a bill? Are you willing to risk your seat for it? So it's very hard for us to get legislators outside of like Seattle or King County or Tacoma areas to really push these things, especially or even outside of the Black Legislative Caucus, to push these kinds of bills, because they always are. I always say, this is my advice I give to people in politics is, don't trust people in politics, trust their ambitions. So if you know what it's gonna, what a legislator wants, what they're looking to do, where they're trying to further themselves, or where if they're trying to run for higher office, those kind of, you figure that out, then you usually know what their answer is going to be, or what their action is going to be on that. Is it because it's not like they always do it to just do the right thing. They're doing it to it's like, how is this going to help me? So you got to create. You want to try and create a win-win situation. So us at SAARC tried to push the narrative that how good this is actually for the whole community, not just the Black community. You help the Black community, your community, everyone else is usually helped. Is always helped, not usually.
Yeah.
The more you harm us, the more you're harming yourselves, the more you're harming America. And so the thing is, the one argument we always get in Washington is they say, well, Washington was never a slave state. But the thing is, that's a false narrative, because it's never not been a slave state. We still do have slavery, unless you think 11 cents an hour is not slavery. And so, and it's just like, we can't just talk about slavery. We have to talk about all of the things that happened before and after chattel slavery, and that's just multiple harms that actually continue slavery and even enhance it after the Emancipation Proclamation. So, right. Like I said, I wasn't even allowed to exist until about 70 years ago, technically. So,
right.
So the thing is, so those are the we have to remind them of what else Washington State has done even before it became a state. The stuff that has happened, statewide. Of course, the national conversation is even deeper than that because of it's a longer history. But here in Washington State, they cannot just say they absolve themselves. Oh, we were in a state until slavery was already gone when we actually became a state. They were, like that's a false narrative, and it's a dodge. So we have to just cancel that out with facts and show the actual history of what happened, not just before the emancipation, but even after.
Absolutely. And, that actually answers something that I want to follow up with. And I want to really lift up and spotlight for those that are listening, that the false argument of, well, we weren't a state, until after slavery was abolished. We never had slavery here. However, one of the things that I think a lot of people don't really get is, formally speaking, that it's only been like 60 plus years that the United States has been a democracy. And I say formally speaking, because we still have a racial wealth gap in every single state in the union, from the blackest states to the whitest states. We still have a pervasive racial wealth gap that impacts housing outcomes, that impacts education, that impacts healthcare, impacts educational attainment, that impacts every single aspect of life. And one thing that a lot of people often lose sight of is how everyday policies are deeply rooted in the practice of chattel slavery and the racist pathology that emerged from that. And one of the things that just really stood out to me in my day job, which I'm not going to go into that, but it involves policy, as some of you guys know, was I was watching the how it was the House floor hearing on the trailer bill last year this past year in 2025 to the covenant home ownership bill. In this trailer bill, this was essentially meant to enhance the covenant home ownership bill, and how almost every single black legislator in the House provided this very strong rebuke of all of these arguments from essentially all Republican legislators. There are even, I think, one or two Latino Republican legislators that said that slavery didn't happen here in Washington, that we have cured our racism, that we've already taken a step forward by having this program in place for a little over, not even a year at that point, a little bit less than a year. And we have a bunch of other housing assistance programs. So we don't need to pass this bill to change the program. And hell, we might even want to put a timer on, or rather, we might even want to put a provision in, change the law a little bit to, well, they didn't say this out loud, but, it's been floated that we might even want to sunset this policy at some time. And here's the kicker. In this debate, and it was very much a debate, that they invoked Booker T. Washington, they invoked Martin Luther King, and when I say they, I mean the Republicans. They invoked all of these misquoted and mischaracterized black leaders from the 19th century, from the mid-20th century, in order to try to make their point as almost as cover to seem not racist. Actually, not even almost as, but just straight up to seem, like we're not racist. So I say all that because it's not just damning to me, but I feel like, especially in Black History Month, that there we go. That there is an issue with consciousness and education. And in addition to the work that you're doing in the legislative realm, I know that SAARC also has a comic book that is being published right now based on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s essay, The Days to Come, and his book, Why We Can't Wait. Can you share do you see this book as right on? Do you see this book as a way to address that kind of whitewashing of not just Dr. King's legacy, but the whitewashing of the consciousness around why reparations and why something like reparations is needed? And Jiba, let's go to you first, and then if you guys, Riall, Kevin, want to join in, feel free to.
First of all, thank you for having me on the show. Second of all, I want to give a shout out to Davita Ingram, because she was the one that reached out to me in order to produce this book. Little backstory, but Davita and I have known each other for, oh my God, we've known each other for decades, because we went to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago together. We were also part of the Black Student Union at the time, of which I was president. So when she approached me for this project, no question that I was a part of it, that I wanted to be a part of it. And in crafting that piece, it made sense, going through the research, it made sense to just create a comic around Dr. King's words, around Dr. King's narrative. There was no need for adding extra text or adding extra nuance or adding subtext or another narrative in that piece, because the narrative was right there. And Dr. King is talking about something that is well overdue. And what's interesting, hearing the conversation earlier, that is this country's original sin. That is this country's original sin that they still don't want to deal with, especially now when that sin has come to bite them on the ass.
Mm-hmm.
Now it is the other America's wake-up call to something that we have been dealing with since the founding of this country.
Yes.
And they are completely crashing out right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because the expectation of us to get into the fight when we have been in the fight
Mm-hmm.
from jump, which also ties into the gross neglect of addressing the problem from jump. And I'm talking from a historical perspective. I'm talking from teaching that reality of what this country is founded on, right? Like last year, this administration, again, wanted to completely whitewash the situation, wanted to get rid of quote-unquote DEI programs, wanted to get rid of any mention of the injustices that happened in the past in order to perpetuate the injustices that are happening right now. And you have a group of people who are now finally feeling that. They finally understand that the complexion is not their protection.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so now the question is, are they going to finally wake up?
That's a question.
That is a big question. And in doing this comic book, it's very important because all of my comic book work is political. All of my comic book work speaks to the racial condition. It speaks to the political.
Comics are political.
Yeah, comics are political. Comics are hip hop. That's another tagline we'll get into a little bit later.
Wait. Say that again.
Comics are hip hop.
Absolutely.
And we'll get into that a little later on. But comics are a mechanism. They are a tool for education, right? They're an immediate tool for education. If we go back to, the 70s or even before the 70s, the 40s, 50s, the Golden Legacy comics, which were historical comics focusing on different Black leaders, Black officials, giving us Black history in a digestible format and an easily understandable format. The comic book is a very powerful tool for that. So with Why We Can't Wait, doing this comic to illustrate the need for reparations and also illustrate the feasibility, the accessibility, the reality of how this thing can work. It was very, very important for me to be a part of, and it's very important for me to help get the message out in this format. So I hope in a roundabout way I've answered your question.
Absolutely. And don't worry, sometimes I can be very circuitous myself. So that was perfect. And in fact, I want to just bookmark what you said about comic, the line, the comics are hip hop. And I'm glad that you bring it back to the golden age and the silver age and the intention that comic book artists had when it came to exploring not just the human condition, but also exploring the stories of different groups of people, and particularly how Black stories and the Black experience played a role, even though we weren't allowed to actually be on the page, and how we've had to fight in order to be able to even write those stories in a real accessible way.
Well, here's the interesting thing is that, and that's something that I'm sorry we're diverging for a little bit from, but it kind of ties in. What's interesting is that in terms of representation in comics, the way that it's framed nowadays is that people focus on the character, and people keep looking at what I like to call the corporate two, DC and Marvel, to give them that representation. They don't focus on the creators of these comics. And to be honest with you, African Americans, Black folks have been in the comic book industry since the comic book industry began.
Absolutely.
We've always had a place in there, right?
Yeah.
And it's always been behind the scenes. It's like maybe one or two people will pop up, Jackie Orms, definitely. George Harriman in the 20s with Crazy Cat, Matt Baker in the 50s with the Good Girl art. But you began to see more of us coming in there, or more of us being recognized in there. From the 60s, from underground comics like Grass Green to the 70s, where you kind of broke through, if you will, into the corporate too, with Billy Graham, later on Jim Owsley, now known as Christopher Priest, Chuck Patton, Keith Pollard, so on and so forth. We've always been there. And it was in the 90s where you had the explosion of the Black Age of comics, the term coined by Tertel Only in Chicago, may he rest in peace. But that's when you had that explosion of books like Tribe, of books like Brother Man, of Milestone Media. So
actually, I'm glad you mentioned Milestone, because I think that's a perfect place to pause for a second. Mm-hmm. You know what? It's funny. As someone that has been doing this for several years, you would think I'd be better at transitioning us to talking about commercials and a couple of things coming up. So just in case you are tuning in or came in a little bit late, you are listening to the Unmasked Agenda. We're here in the Rainier Avenue Radio studio. If you are listening over YouTube and Spotify, we just want to take a break for a second with our guests from SAARC. And to highlight the Call to Conscience Museum opening in a couple of weeks on Valentine's Day. It'll be open from Thursday, Friday at 7 p.m. And Saturday from Sunday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. And you can get tickets at calltoconscience.world. And then there's a live tribute concert, The History of Funk and Parliament, this Saturday at Columbia City Theater at 7:30 p.m. And this is off script. You might just see me there because that sounds really cool. Tickets at columbiacitytheater.world. Again, tickets at columbiacitytheater.world. Do us over, Daniel.
Unmuted.
Paul Pearson, host of Star Time, and this is my real voice. Honest, you're hearing it on Rainier Avenue Radio. .world.
Get ready, the funk is coming. On February 7th, the legendary Columbia City Theater becomes ground zero for a night of pure funk, soul, and black musical excellence. The mothership lands one more again. KG and the Star 5 return with their electrifying Parliament Funkadelic tribute, featuring a special guest appearance by Teleplayer. This isn't just a concert, it's a celebration of black history, honoring the revolutionary sound and creative genius of Parliament Funkadelic and George Clinton, the architects of a movement that changed music forever. Don't miss your chance to experience the funk live, loud, and unapologetic. February 7th, Columbia City Theater. One night, one stage, one unforgettable funk celebration. Tickets are on sale now because the funk doesn't win, and neither should you.
Happy Humphrey. We're excited that you decided to use for the party. This is live. in right now on Fresh Juice YouTube page at youtube.com/@Fresh Juice Media, or subscribe to us on Spotify or Apple Music.
Fresh Juice and Blue. Women Empowerment Talk Radio, your community connection to business success, and weekly to RainierAvenueRadio.org. Listen and learn from local and national guest speakers, providing resources and knowledge for the everyday business owner. Women Empowerment Talk Radio, weekly on RainierAvenueRadio.org.
This winter, I don't want illness to get in the way of my holiday plans. That's why I got my annual flu and COVID shot. Everyone ages 6 months and older and get the flu and COVID shot each year. They make it less likely you'll get sick, and even if you do get infected, you won't get as sick. Free vaccines are available even if you don't have health insurance. For more information, visit kingcounty.gov/find-a-clinic. That's kingcounty.gov/find-a-clinic.
Rainier Avenue Radio. Seattle's best talk and sports.
All right. Welcome back. You are listening to the Unmasked Agenda here on Rainier Avenue Radio. And I just want to acknowledge that we're joined by three esteemed guests from SAARC, the Seattle African American Reparations Committee. We are joined by Mr. Riall Johnson, Mr. Kevin Allen, Mr. Jiba Anderson, calling all the way in from the Windy City, Chi-Town itself. And Jiba, you were giving us a really quick timeline on the explosion, what I might like to call the quantum that has led into the quantum age of Black comics. And I apologize for interrupting that, but we have to go to a commercial break. But I do come back to that. That's okay, sir.
No, that's totally fine.
Excellent. But first, before we get into that, there is actually a reparations study program here in Washington State. And, you know, we're talking a lot about history, we're talking a lot about consciousness, we're talking about policy, and I just want to dive right into talking about that reparations study and also the values and the ideas it's anchored in. So, Kevin, I would love to start with you. What are your thoughts on this study and the importance of reparations and harm studies to addressing the harm that has been done to our community and how we can move forward?
Okay, and you know, I'm going to level set a little bit and go back to what Dr. King said in 1963, and then that'll get us about the reparations study.
Yes, sir.
Dr. King said, among the many vital jobs to be done, the nation must not only radically readjust its attitude towards the Negro in the compelling present, but must incorporate in its planning some compensatory consideration for the handicaps he has inherited from the past. That's the harm that was done. And what he goes on and says, our society has been doing something special against the Negro for hundreds of years. And how can that be absorbed into the mainstream if we do not do something special for the Negro now in order to balance the equation and equip him to compete in a just and equal basis? But the attitude has always been the Negro should be granted equality, they agree, but he should not ask for nothing more. And he said that, you know, in 63. And when we look at the reparations study and what's happening here, it's a big step, because on the federal level it hasn't happened. In order to really quantify the harm, to really identify what was special done against Washington residents, we have to look at the special things that were done to harm us, and then say, well, what's the special thing that can be done to kind of have some type of repair and restoration? And, that's typical in our society. It's been done for others. And this is an opportunity for us. And it's a start to do that. And so during this time period of collecting data and quantifying the harms that have been done to Black residents in Washington, descendants of chattel slavery, by quantifying that, then we can come up with possible policy solutions and remedies, and that's what's been done. And so that is where the study is coming in, and just for the nuts and bolts of it for the people, the money has been set aside, and the process is being handled through the Commission on African American Affairs and the Washington State Department of Commerce, and they're working with researchers to do that, and so that's the process that's be going on for the next couple years. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Riall, about the process and
read my mind. I was just about to ask. Yep.
So yeah, I mean, the study it's not really for us. We already know what was done.
Right.
It's more about quantifying it and presenting the legal argument about what exactly and why it was done and why this case needs to be made. The simple fact is, if you believe in inheritance and generational wealth, and you believe in theft and lost wages and generational theft, and so the fact that we literally use banks that benefited off of slavery that are there, that in charge, that have the nerve to charge us interest rates, right, and deny us loans, is the fact those are the kinds of things that scientifically proven with data that we have to show specifically to the state to show why reparations are deserved and what the state can actually do to remedy that. So, so I think it's the state of Washington was established in 1889. You cannot tell me that there was not there was just not all kinds of harms being perpetrated in Black community. There were still burning down Black towns,
absolutely,
all over the country. And so there's, just the shocking things that you see about Black history that people are probably just going to be learning this month about the atrocities that's been committed to us around the country in history. That's just what you see usually on social media, maybe barely what you teach in school, doing actual deep dives into history, specifically on seeing case by case by case, and you're in locally, it opens up a whole new level of brutality that has been done to the Black community. So the excuse of we weren't a slave state, or we hear, well, other countries did slavery. There's never been the type of slavery that has been done here in this country, where it's it's forced. It's not just along with the brutality of the actual slavery, but the breeding, the death, and the disease that was perpetrated on this, and then of course the continued incarceration to let it go, to continue it to this day. The atrocities that are still happening in the prisons, the people that are still locked up for things that I see, you would see happen in college, and so. So it's funny, I went to a prestigious university, and that was where I probably saw the most felonies in my life. But it was kids experimenting with, with drugs. But I grew up in high school during the crime bill, which was, I graduated high school in 1996. So I see friends of mine getting snatched for a dime bag, and so it's just So these are things that we say. And it's this is okay. Now how do we quantify this to show the harms that are done, and then show what can be remedied for that? And the thing is, the fact is, I was looking for we use we present facts and arguments to this stuff. It's just you have to do it over and over and over to convince people and say and destroy their arguments because they can't, so they can, and then pretty much in Olympia, you got to back them into a corner. When it comes down to it, it is the largest, theft of wages in world history. So it's like,
not even just, like I love the comparison to wage theft. And in fact, I would say it's a theft. Yeah, actually, let's just keep the comparison to wage theft for a second, because here in Seattle, there is an anti-wage theft law. And in fact, we have, a city agency, the Office of Labor Standards, that is not just in charge of prosecuting and going after people for wage theft, but use it like thinking about that analogy that you bring up, Riall, wage theft, and think about not just the actual wages that were lost during enslavement, but the kind of wage theft that went on by other means during what we could call American apartheid, during Jim Crow segregation in many places, not just in the South, but also due to the kind of underhanded, more subtle approaches that we saw in Washington, right? So if we continue on with that line of thinking, Riall, what I guess I'm wondering, like, I don't know, have you ever read Ta-Nehisi Coates' The Case for Reparations?
Yes.
Yeah, so in that case, and for those that haven't, it's a great essay back in June 2014. It was published by The Atlantic. It really detailed what reparations would mean, not just in moral terms, but also it did provide some policy prescriptions. And Riall, like you mentioned, it provided a very firm, concrete, both qualitative argument for reparations. And I'm wondering, thinking about your, comparing it to wage theft, what do you think Washington State's approach could or should be, based on like some of the studies that have already been done?
I think you can set a standard to show, that Washington's one of the newest states, relatively in America. So the fact that Washington State can establish a reparations policy, that means all states can, because it goes even deeper when you go back to like my parents are from Alabama, so it's like
wow, that's
the fact that so if you can get to go back, like I said, if we can set a high standard, because what we can't do here is say, well, because it wasn't a state until 1889 after the emancipation, we should settle for less. No, we should set the bar as high as possible, so other states that actually had a longer history of slavery can even go further. So that's what we can't do. We cannot compromise on our advocacy. We have to make sure that we stand firm in this. So, like I said, we don't let other states down. This is a national issue. It can't just be like, well, we're going to take our little check or little pennies or crumbs, because I said then other state legislatures that can be more or less, usually less progressive than Washington is, will follow suit. And so, like I said, we have to make sure that we do not compromise and set a standard here in Washington. Do not settle for crumbs.
Absolutely. And also, if you hear a little bit of noise in the background, that we unfortunately have a little problem with our noise wall. So I apologize to you guys if it's messing with your sound in the background. And Daniel, maybe we could do something about that later on, and for shows moving forward. But hey, either way, kind of moving on.
I want to add something to what Riall was saying, and one of the things that, and I'm sure we'll get to it before we conclude, is that part of this process that started now, with the study being done, during the time of the study that's taking place, you know, this is the time. I often say you don't get engagement without orientation.
Absolutely.
And this is a time while the people are doing the research and studying, we at SAARC, through the comic books and through some of the other things we do with leader labs and public engagement, is we're going to get the public oriented. Because when we get down to the end, it's going to be up to the public to say, okay, we have the will to follow through, and not just, you know, what typically happens is look and lament. We don't want to look and lament. We want to look and say, now we have it, let's move on it. And so this is the time when we should be orienting the general public, also orienting and educating our legislators.
Absolutely.
And getting them to do that value. And that's one of the things that I'm proud to be a part of SAARC, because in doing things that may seem, some people might say, a little out of the box, but these are the things that we have to do to get a law passed and to get legislation done. You either have to have the legislators do it by them agreeing, and they won't do it unless the public is behind them, or getting some kind of potential initiative that's voted in by the public. And so during this time while the study is going on, one of the things that we're doing in SAARC is, you know, to take a Bible thing like John the Baptist, preparing the way. So when the time comes, people won't say, okay, 2028, now we're just now learning about it. So this is the time when, while the study is going on, and then we're adding funds to increase the study capacity, and perhaps get more
something happening now?
Pardon me?
The adding funds, is that something that folks are lobbying for now, or is there legislation that's currently going through Olympia?
Well, the legislation has allowed for funds to be added to increase the scope and to make it more comprehensive, and that is happening through some of our counties and stuff that are being funds are being added to make sure that we can do, as Riall said, we're not going to settle for second rate. We're going to get the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
So just to clarify, is that at the county level or at the state level?
The state is running the program, and they're open to having additional funds to come in to support. And the county has added some funds to it. King County has, and there's efforts to add more to it. But for other counties to do it, they have to get the public to do it. So part of this process, and this is an example of it, is
right.
You know, as they said in the old days, win hearts and minds.
So apropos of that, I want to kind of circle back to comics as hip hop. And for this tune, I'm wondering that if you could dig in a little bit more into what you mean by that, Jiba, and specifically with this tune that we're talking about, the tune of reparations, justice, and like Riall said, setting the bar as high as possible for Washington State. What does that song sound like, if you don't mind the metaphor?
So applying that metaphor, that metaphor, comics or hip hop, that's actually a tagline for an anthology series that I curate called 4 Pages, 16 Bars of Visual Mixtape, which is an anthology series, the longest anthology series really, that celebrates independent works from creators of color. It is actually the evolution of what all Negro comics wanted to do in the 40s. And so with that tagline, what I meant by comics or hip hop is that comics, especially the Black comics subgenre, is a community, it's a culture, and it also delves into commerce. With that being said, it's regional, you know, because you have different comic scenes throughout the country. It could be breaking down, Black comics could be breaking down in the same regions as hip hop, Midwest, East Coast, West Coast, Dirty South, right? In that, and applying that to the discussion of reparations, comics are political, as I said before. They are social means of communication, right? The best comic creators, the best comic book artists are visual MCs, the best writers are literary DJs. And when they put their talents together for a cause, not to be preachy, but to really, you know, illustrate and expose the concerns, the injustices, the joys, the sorrows of the Black community, it's a powerful thing, right? If we think about recent books like Bitter Root.
Right. Oh my God. One of my favorites. Sorry,
Right.
I love Bitter Root.
No, it's okay. Bitter Root or Excellence is another book, you know. Even, you know, my book, The Horseman. When it's done right, you know, it really affects people, and it affects people in that visceral way that
By the way,
you know.
Sorry, Jiba, just 1 second, just to interrupt. For those of you out there who are like comic fans from myself and usually sample the big two, The Horseman, definitely recommend it. If you were disappointed with the Eternals film and you liked what Kieran Gillen did with the recent Eternals run, and also if you want that Jack Kirby flavor, definitely give The Horseman a read. Sorry, Jiba, I just want to give you that shout out and give you your flowers.
It's that Jack Kirby flavor with an African mythological sensibility. That's the only thing that I wanted to say.
Sorry. Okay, I'm sorry being to punch there, but you know what?
No worries. No worries at all. No worries at all. Trust me. I appreciate the comparison to Kirby.
Absolutely.
With that, because in terms of bringing the Horseman to life and in terms of designing the Horseman, I did take that Kirby model of how he modernized Norse mythology, Thor and whatnot. I just applied it to our mythology, and specifically to the region where we come from, which is West and Central Africa, not the Egyptology stuff, but, you know, dealing with the Orishas, because the Orishas survived the slave trade and came over here to the States, and those faith systems combined with Christianity to create religions like Santeria, Candomblé, things of that nature. So what I am doing with the Horseman is just taking that tradition of our survival, of our spiritual survival, right, and hiding it in plain sight in this modern, quote unquote, modern format of comics and whatnot. And that also ties back into the whole notion of comics or hip hop and why they are such a powerful medium when used right, when used well, to spark conversation and to inspire, right? Our Latino brothers and sisters, Latino cartoonists, definitely use the comic strip or the cartoon as a political platform. And, you know, and some of us do it, more of us need to do it. But again, it's a situation of how to craft that language, right? Because with us, you know, or when talking about social issues.
Right. And actually, on that note, I do want to kind of bring this back because we only have a couple minutes left.
Yeah, sorry.
No. That was actually a perfect springboard to the end. And with the final question, I just want to start off with Riall. We have there's so much that's been said, and I know we can continue this conversation, but what do you think is the path forward? Because on the one hand, we have this artistic and cultural, artistic and consciousness raising front, and also we, like you mentioned several times, that we have to do continuous political education of legislators, of organizations, individuals in community, both Black and non-Black, on the importance and the feasibility of reparations. So what do you think would be the legislative path forward and the, I guess, programmatic, like the campaign path forward, Riall? And we'll start with you and then go around.
Well, legislatively, like, we're on pace, because we had the proviso passed last year. So we're just waiting for the RFP to be finished and the commission to, finalize the contract, or, with, I haven't followed up with or seen, but they have to hire a firm to do the research, and actually, so we can quantify it. So the key, though, after that is we have to be ready to act once that study is finished. We have to act and have a bill ready to go to say, this is what has been done. This is, the case is based on your own government, commission study. This is what has been the harm that that the state of Washington has done, or the harm that has been done to Black people in the state of Washington. Doesn't have to be necessarily just the state of Washington government. It could be what the federal government or the local government, city or county has done to that. So it's not just on, like, so we can't give them wiggle room out of it to say, well, that was the feds, that was ICE,
right?
Just like, so. And I think
here, like, 2 people here, y'all did.
We gotta fall. We can't fall on that track, especially like in regards to like thinking that law enforcement is going to save us from ICE, or is going to prevent ICE, protect us from ICE, like local law enforcement. I think, if anything, they're just jealous. They so
to beat people in the street, get away with it.
Get the F out of my city. That's my job, to kill people without impunity. Anyways, don't get sidetracked. So but the thing is, I think it's like we have to be ready to really advocate when the study is done and be unified. We have to have a consensus. Doesn't mean, in a sense, like what the bill will be. Doesn't mean it has to be perfect, like I said, but we have to have a high standard. So, and that's going to be up to stakeholders and leaders that have been leading the charge on this issue, on this, and make sure that we have something solid, that's equitable, and is really going to have a lasting impact. It's going to set an example for the rest of the states, especially the later states like California, Oregon, or Arizona. That they should be reaching for that. And then, of course, it could provide opportunity for eastern and southern states to raise the bar even higher.
And like I said, California is already as another reparations study going on as well. And correct me if I'm wrong, isn't there a jurisdiction in California and in Illinois with reparations programs?
Not in California yet, but Illinois, yes. Evanston, Illinois has one, and it's been great. Ashland, North Carolina, has one. So, but in terms of California,
so I am here getting played off by a producer, but so we'll continue this conversation in one of our other shows. But
we had to do that because part of the preparation is the preparation of the public.
Well, before
SAARC was doing preparation of the public.
I was about to say, before we go, I just want to thank you all for joining us, and thank you, Daniel, for producing, and always thank you guys at home for listening in, and welcome to season 2, F-ICE, Free Palestine, and we are out. Thank you.